I didn't go to that party looking to ruin my marriage. I went because I was tired of feeling invisible. My name is Marlo. I'm 38, married to Graham for 12 years. And until that night, I had convinced myself that loneliness inside a marriage didn't count as betrayal. Graham is a good man on paper. He works hard, pays the bills, never yells, never cheats, never forgets birthdays. But somewhere along the way, he stopped seeing me. Conversations turned into schedules. Touch became accidental. Silence became normal. The party was hosted by a colleague in Camden. Nothing wild, nothing secret. I told Graham I'd be late, that there would be drinks and networking. He nodded without looking up from his laptop. That should have been my first warning. At the party, people laughed when I spoke. They asked questions. They noticed when I walked into a room. I didn't flirt at first. I just breathed. Then a man named Callum handed me a glass of wine and listened like what I said mattered. Another, Julian, teased me gently, not cruelly, just enough to remind me I was still a woman. I crossed a line before I touched anyone. It happened when I realized I didn't miss Graham. I didn't wonder what he was doing. I didn't feel guilty. I felt awake. When Callum leaned close, when his hand brushed my arm, I let it stay there. Nothing explicit happened, nothing I could easily confess, but intention matters. I wanted to be desired by men who weren't my husband, and that truth settled quietly in my chest. I left before midnight, my head buzzing, my heart steady in a way it hadn't been for years. The train ride home felt unreal. I rehearsed nothing. I planned no lies. I assumed the night would fade into a private memory I could lock away. But when I opened the front door, Graham was sitting at the table, phone in his hand, eyes sharp in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. He didn't ask where I'd been. He said, calmly, "You smell different." The room felt smaller. I laughed, too quickly, said it was perfume and wine. He looked at me the way you look at someone you finally understand. "Did you enjoy the attention?" he asked. That question cut deeper than an accusation. I realized then that he had known for months that I was drifting. He just hadn't cared enough to stop it. I told him the truth, not details, just the shape of it. I said I went because I felt unwanted. I said I liked being seen. I said nothing physical happened, but something emotional did. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he nodded once and said, "I wish you'd told me before you went looking elsewhere." His voice wasn't angry. It was finished. That night, we slept in separate rooms. In the morning, Graham made coffee like always. He said we needed to talk about what we were actually living, not the marriage we pretended still existed. I understood then that cheating isn't always a reckless act. Sometimes it's a signal flare fired too late. I didn't betray Graham at that party. I revealed what had already been broken. The hardest part wasn't his disappointment. It was accepting that I had chosen attention over honesty, and that choice changed everything. I stayed awake the rest of that morning, watching light move across the ceiling, realizing how carefully I had edited my own unhappiness. I told myself I was patient, mature, loyal. What I was, in truth, was afraid. Afraid to demand more, afraid to risk being alone, afraid to admit that comfort had replaced connection. Graham and I talked for hours that weekend. Not arguing, not bargaining, just inventory. What was missing? What we stopped doing? What we assumed would survive neglect? He admitted he had withdrawn years ago, telling himself I didn't need him the way I once did. I admitted I stopped reaching because rejection had trained me to be quiet. Neither confession fixed anything, but they clarified it. Marriage, I learned, doesn't collapse in one dramatic moment. It erodes politely. It smiles while it empties you out. By Sunday night, we agreed to separate, not as enemies, but as people who waited too long to be honest. Some friends call me selfish. Others call me brave. Neither felt accurate. I wasn't chasing men at that party. I was chasing proof that I still existed. Graham deserved truth before betrayal, and I failed him there. I own that. But I also refuse the lie that women stray because they are greedy or cruel. Sometimes we stray because silence convinces us we've already disappeared. I moved into a small flat near the river, learned how quiet freedom can be. Graham and I speak now with a strange respect, like survivors of the same storm. The party didn't end my marriage. It exposed the end we had both been avoiding. If there is a lesson here, it's an uncomfortable one. Attention feels intoxicating when you've been starved. Honesty feels terrifying when it threatens stability. I chose wrong first, then chose truth. I live with both choices, awake, accountable, and finally, visible. I don't expect sympathy, only understanding. Stories like mine make people choose sides, but real lives rarely split cleanly. Graham was not a villain. I was not a monster. We were two adults avoiding discomfort until it became damage. If someone hears this and recognizes themselves, speak sooner. Ask harder questions. Don't wait for a party, a stranger, or a moment of temptation to tell you what your silence already knows. Desire ignored doesn't disappear. It looks for witnesses. I learned that too late, but I learned it fully, and I will not pretend otherwise. Accountability remains my compass now, guiding quieter choices, firmer boundaries, and conversations I no longer postpone, even when honesty risks endings, because truth refuses silence forever here.